Xi Jinping warns against misguided approach towards one country, two systems.
I was with the troop all the time throughout those 79 days, and I visited them whenever I had the time to.
Andy Zheng defends the way he handled the Occupy protests.
We cannot have a society in which some dictator someplace can start imposing censorship here in the United States.
And Barack Obama wades into Sony hacking controversy.
Good evening. President Xi Jinping today used a shoe analogy to highlight the importance of both components of the one country, two systems principle. Speaking during the 15th anniversary of Macau's handover, Xi warned against a misguided approach towards the policy. His comments drew mixed views here in Hong Kong. At the grand ceremony today, the president was full of praise for the former Portuguese colony. Xi Jinping said with a high degree of autonomy, Macau has managed to build stronger ties with the motherland, with people's love for the nation and the enclave having become a mainstream value of society. In his 20-minute speech, Xi strongly emphasized the importance of unswerving commitment to one country, two systems as a basic state policy when it comes to Hong Kong and Macau. We must both adhere to the one China principle and respect the differences of the two systems, he said. He added that we cannot focus only on one side to the neglect of the other. Otherwise, a misguided approach, just like putting one's left foot into the right shoe, would lead us to nowhere. Many in Hong Kong believe Xi's message was aimed at the territory, which has been embroiled in a heated political debate over democracy and autonomy.
I think it is important because it is the central government's a very important policy to solve the problem of Hong Kong as well as Macau. In Hong Kong, some of the people, he just emphasized two systems, but they don't care about the one country. I think it is wrong. One country, two systems, you're all together to think about that. We cannot be just emphasize about two systems only. And also, everything we needed to follow the basic law.
But pan-Democrats insist the Basic Law and Sino-British Joint Declaration mean Hong Kong is entitled to what they describe as genuine universal suffrage.
He wants us to now fit our right foot into the Communist Party's left shoe. But I can tell the President that that is not on. We are insisting on the right shoe that we are entitled to wear.
Leung believes Beijing is trying to redefine the Sino-British Joint Declaration and brainwash people into thinking it was Hong Kong, which misunderstood it from the beginning.
The fourth-term government of Macau was sworn in today, but activist groups also made their voices heard on this handover anniversary. Stephanie Choi has that story.
The government of Macau hosted a flag-raising ceremony at the Lotus Square this morning. Chief Executive Fernando Choi and Li Gang, director of the central government's liaison office in Macau, were among those attending the ceremony. An official event marking the 15th anniversary of Macau's return to China was held, along with the swearing-in ceremony of the fourth-term government. Choi took his oath in the presence of President Xi Jinping. Other top Macau officials followed. In his speech, Choi vowed to uphold the one country, two systems principle and ensure that the enclave retains a high degree of autonomy. He said with the help of the mainland, Macau's booming economy has improved people's livelihoods and brought peace and stability to society. Choi said this demonstrates the positive aspects of the one country, two systems principle, benefiting both Macau and the nation. After the inauguration ceremony, President Xi met with the fourth-term government and representatives from Macau-based Chinese enterprises. He returned to Beijing this afternoon following his two-day visit. Meanwhile, groups rallied for the election of its chief executive through universal suffrage. The New Macau Association led a gathering of some 100 people at Tapshek Square. They called on their government to relaunch a political reform consultation process so that Macau can have a directly elected chief executive in 2019. Another group rallied from Yaohuan Park to the government headquarters, demanding that officials cater to their housing needs and stop importing foreign labor. Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
The police chief has rejected suggestions that he was out of touch with the force during the Occupy protests. Andy Zhang insists he worked with his colleagues behind the scenes to make the best possible arrangements throughout the movement. It's been pointed out that the police chief only made his first public comments on the Occupy movement 3 weeks after it began in late September. Speaking to TVB News, Andy Zhang rejected criticism which mounted as he made few public appearances during the rest of the civil disobedience campaign, which had put serious pressure on frontline officers.
Now, I have to emphasize that in the police force, nothing is a one-man job. And in this case, I think you agree with me that the arrangement we put in place actually serves the purpose much better than if I were to do it on my own.
But shouldn't a leader be out there leading?
What you don't see on the media doesn't mean that it did not happen. I was with the troop all the time throughout those 79 days, all right? And I visited them whenever I had the time to. All right?
On the ground?
On the ground, including on the ground. And I communicated with them through our internal channel. Now, I have my finger on the pulse as far as the morale of the officers is concerned.
Zhang also denied the government used the police as a political tool and stressed that officers have strict guidelines that they always follow on the use of force. He also insisted the police tried to strike a balance between enforcing the law to maintain public safety and order and showing occupiers leniency during the protests.
We hope to avoid major bloodshed. And in particular, we don't want to harm the students. And that was why we are giving this incident as much time as we could. Now, it's not to say that we haven't done anything. And as a matter of fact, during those 79 days, we arrested close to 1,000 people, including those who were for the Occupy movement and those who were against.
As for claims that some officers were seen as easily provoked, Zhang said police are trained in psychological competency. He did admit these have been trying times.
However well you prepare your officers, there will still be time when he will be caught with something that he did not expect. Now that goes back to the basic training that he's got. He is first and foremost a law enforcement officer. He is there to enforce the law. He's not there to take things personal. He's not there to make enemy with anybody.
You've heard anything, but morale was...
Overseas now, and U.S. President Barack Obama says Sony made a mistake shelving a controversial satire movie under the threat of a terrorist attack. The FBI pins the hacking of Sony Pictures directly on North Korea. Pyongyang has denied involvement and has now proposed a joint investigation with Washington into the case. Alan Buknia reports.
The comedy The Interview depicts two American journalists who have an interview lined up with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. They're approached by a CIA agent who asks them to assassinate Kim.
Take him out.
Like on the town?
Party?
No, take him out.
After devastating cyber attacks and threats of terrorism, Sony decided to pull the movie from its Christmas Day release. The FBI has released a statement specifically pointing the finger at North Korea for the attacks. In his year-end press conference, U.S. President Barack Obama said he feels Sony made a mistake.
I'm sympathetic that Sony, as a private company, was worried about liabilities and this and that and the other. I wish they'd spoken to me first. I would have told them, do not get into a pattern in which you're intimidated by these kinds of criminal attacks. If somebody is able to intimidate folks out of releasing a satirical movie, imagine what they start doing when they see a documentary that they don't like or news reports that they don't like.
It's the first time the U.S. has directly accused another country of a cyber attack of this magnitude. A computer security industry executive calls the situation disturbing.
So what we have, in effect, is a suppression of free speech here in America because of an action in cyberspace. Really disturbing thing here is that we now have a precedent. So it's not just North Korea, but every other nation state, hacktivist, terrorist group, criminal group has been watching this very carefully and taking notes.
Obama has said there will be repercussions for North Korea, but he declined to be specific about any actions under consideration. Alan Booknia, TVB News.
Barack Obama also spoke about U.S.-Cuba relations in his year-end press conference, just days after he announced plans to normalize diplomatic ties. He doesn't expect overnight changes on the island or a quick end to the American embargo.
I share the concerns of dissidents there and human rights activists that this is still a regime that represses its people. I don't anticipate overnight changes. But what I know deep in my bones is that if you've done the same thing for 50 years and nothing's changed, you should try something different if you want a different outcome. The whole point of normalizing relations is that it gives us a greater opportunity to have influence with that government than not.
An Australian woman has been arrested for murder over the deaths of 8 children, 7 of whom were her own kids. Police have also confirmed the identities of the victims in a mass murder that has shocked the nation. James Aitken with the latest.
Stunned and grief-stricken, residents of the northern city of Cairns gather at a makeshift memorial near a horrific crime scene. Police were called to the suburban home after receiving a report of a woman with stab wounds. What they discovered inside was much worse. 8 children were dead.
I can confirm that the victims are 4 girls aged 14, 12, 11 and 2, and 4 boys aged 9, 8, 6 and 5. The mother of these children is currently assisting us with our inquiries.
The 37-year-old woman has not yet been charged. Police have not confirmed claims from the woman's cousin that one of her other sons, a 20-year-old, came home and found his brothers and sisters dead. Investigators have not said how the children died, but they have collected several knives from the scene.
Every minute we have a better understanding of what went on in the house, and I can assure you that by the time this investigation is completed, we will understand every single movement and everything that happened in that house.
The tragedy is the latest shock for a country still reeling after the deadly Sydney cafe siege earlier this week. Queensland's acting premier, a father of 3 children himself, said he can only imagine the grief the community is feeling.
And I'm sure I speak on behalf of all Queenslanders and indeed all Australians when we say we are with you, we are here to support you, and we feel with you the grief that this community feels.
With the country already on heightened alert, police are stressing the stabbings were a domestic incident, and there is no cause for alarm in the wider community. James Aitken, TVB News.
And still ahead in the news tonight. Raphael Hoy's wife says he will appeal guilty verdict. Ban Ki-moon visits Ebola-hit West Africa. And legal woes facing swimming great Michael Phelps.
Power he possesses. It's like the gods of old, like Mercury on Earth. Because you can run real fast, that you're invincible, you're